Don't you just hate seeing annoying ads that follow you all around the internet? In this case, today's episode is going to be an absolute treat. I got to speak to one of the leaders heading the team that works on this technology for ad blocks. Her name is Dr. Humera Noor, and she's part of eyeo as the head of engineering. In this conversation, I had the absolute pleasure of diving into Dr. Humera's background. What does it take for somebody with an immigrant background to come to Germany, get acclimated to the work environment and the country, and what are the struggles that a lot of software engineers are going through when they go to a new country and they have to adapt to their environment. Dr. Humera has a very strong academic background, and she's also worked in the private sector, and she shares her insights of what does it take to combine the two in order to create exceptional products. Personally, she's had a lot of tough time in the past where she has been discriminated because of her nationality, her skin color, or her culture, and she shares her insights of what does it take to build a thick skin in order to overcome this, and what are the lessons that we can all learn from that. In addition, Dr. Humera talks in general about what skills young people are missing in tech, and in general when they come into the workforce as junior employees, what does it take to build a strong company culture in a 300 plus person team. Overall, Dr. Humera shares a lot of insights that might be interesting for you, and every single person that I've spoke to regarding Dr. Humera have only had the best possible things to say. She was actually one of the top recommendations for women in tech, and this is why we wanted to have this conversation today. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did and look forward to hear your feedback. This is Alex from Baldur Connect, and this is the Unwrapped Tech Leadership Journeys podcast. Enjoy and see you on the other side.
Unwrapped Tech Leadership Journeys, Baldur Connect podcast.
Welcome everybody. I have an exciting guest today, and I want to introduce you guys to Dr. Humera Noor. And Humera, thank you so much for making the time. I know you're always very busy doing a lot of different things, but could you maybe kick us off by introducing a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what you're currently doing?
Thank you so much, Alex, for having me here. And hi, everyone. As Alex said, I'm Dr. Humera, and I define myself as somebody who wants to make a difference. And my career journey, whatever I have done is all surrounding around this core value, making a difference. So after graduation, I straight away jumped into academia because teaching came directly to my heart. It's coming from my heart. And I believe that I could make a huge difference in the lives of people by teaching them technology. And this is where I started. And down the years, although I'm still connected to academia, but I also moved into the industry and took upon the field of machine learning and data analysis. And this is where I really went down throughout my career.
And can I ask why those two things? Because doing one of those things on their own, it's difficult enough, right? There's a lot of specialists that have, the field is growing so fast that even just being a data scientist, it's hard to keep up with everything. So how did you manage to balance both at the same time?
That's a very good question. So I started from the academia and I was doing quite well to my satisfaction. But at one point in time, I realized that I can make a better contribution to the academics if I have some industrial experience. And I was given the opportunity to either stay in the academia and go more into research or go towards the industry and get some real world hands-on experience. And I decided to take that path. And after gathering a few years of focusing on the industry, like really getting my hands dirty, doing programming and working on Python, like writing code, I came back and I realized that now I could do a better job at transferring those skills to others as well. But data in itself is so powerful and I absolutely love it that I was like, okay, I wanted to keep that connection working into the industry and making a real world impact and sharing my knowledge with the new generation to making an impact in that side as well. And you are right, sometimes it gets hectic a lot, managing two, I won't say they are two full-time jobs. So now teaching is more of part-time passion for me. My full-time job is my current position at eyeo, where we are building products to create a fair internet for the web, for the world. Or I must say, I'm working on creating a fair internet for the world. And that's like really very rewarding, making a contribution on both sides.
We're definitely going to get into all of the details at eyeo and what you're doing there right now, what you guys are building, as we talked about last time. I'm curious, at what age did you start programming? Is that something only after academia, or is that something you started doing while you were still a student?
It was something which I was doing while I was a student. So being a computer engineering majors, programming was part of the core. And this is where I really started from assembly language, low-level programming that built into C, C++, and then more recently Python. So it was like there all along.
Right. I guess you need a base layer, obviously, of that to get into data analytics and machine learning. And how did that evolve? Now you're seen, obviously, as a leader in your company and what you're doing. So how did maybe your involvement or your ratio of programming versus taking on other responsibilities, what does that look like nowadays compared to when you started?
It has totally changed. So now the position that I have as a director of engineering, it's more a strategic role. So it's more of defining the strategy, defining the vision, mission of the departments of the company, making sure that the business is flourishing, and then supporting all of this through the engineering and technology. So it's everything that I did previously has become a foundation of what I am doing now. So I'm not writing code anymore, not hands-on anymore, but all of that is now like used in those strategic developments.
Right.
And I can say that without that, this would not have been possible.
And I'm always curious to see, because we speak to all kinds of people, we have some partner companies that we help hiring with. And like one of the founders, he's like a prodigy. He's been coding since the age of 13. This is all he ever knew. He founded and sold a company before the age of 18 while he's still in college. Then he founded another couple companies. So, borderline that story of almost like the Mark Zuckerbergs and the Jack Dorsey college borderline dropout who founded these companies, just really good at coding and really good at this one thing, right? Whereas oftentimes academia, maybe more so lately, takes a bit of a hit because a lot of times, maybe certain departments, not so much computer scientists, but it seems like people who are only focused in academia, they're almost seen as being disconnected from the technical world. They're almost seen as, living in this theoretical world, almost like theoretical physicists versus, experimental physicists. Whereas you went from academia to applying yourself. How do you see that whole dynamic play out? Obviously, they're both important for each other, right? A lot of the modern technology that we have now, the ideas came from academia, from research and whatnot. So they cannot exist without each other to a certain extent. So how do you balance that, being only academia focused or only technical focused? Or do you recommend starting with one, transitioning to the other, or vice versa? Or is it just dependent on the person? So what's your full philosophy around that?
Very interesting question. And I agree with what you said, that you have to have that balance. Whenever you miss that balance between academic theoretical studies and the practical applications, if you don't have that balance, then there will be a disbalance and you won't succeed. As long as I was in the academia, all my universities, in my hometown in Pakistan, here in Germany, during my stay in the US at University of Central Florida, in each of these universities, there was a very strong focus on industrial liaison. So all the projects that we were doing, we were making sure that they had a direct industry application. And that, I believe, is the key to really having that balance. You get that innovation from the academia and you get those real-world applications from the industry. And that allows you to keep track on that. Also, I moved to industry after doing my doctorate. And the doctorate and the research actually give you a lot of those professional skills that you need in the industry, like communication skills, problem-solving skills, independent thinking skills. And all of them I could bring from my academic journey into the industry. And that helped me a lot. So the philosophy is simple. You need to have that balance. And it really depends on person to person. Some people really want to dedicate themselves to the academia and be into research, and they are flourishing in that. Some people never did anything like a full-time education. They went into the industry and they flourished there. And some are doing both. So I think it depends on people to people, and it depends really on which path you want to take. You can flourish at any of them.
Right. And depends what age and what time and what place. some guests we had here that they say flat out, look, I feel like I got so lucky. I was at the right place at the right time when this particular technology took off, and I was just
Exactly.
into it and I just stayed in it, right? So it's interesting how it takes different people on these journeys. I get very excited because there's a lot of topics we discussed last time me and you spoke, and you mentioned education. You mentioned that you are focused on learning other interpersonal skills as well that are not necessarily technical. So I want to jump into this as well. So I apologize in advance if we kind of jump around, but let's talk about that, because your family, you are from Pakistan originally, and I've been to Pakistan. You know, two of my very close friends, like brothers, they're from Pakistan. So I understand the mindset and the technical people. There's a lot of great developers, but they're very logical and very clever. You know, I mean, you can be book smart, but they're very clever, and they have these very creative and surprising ways of solving certain problems, technical problems, right? Whereas you spend, I believe, more than 15 years now in Germany, and Germany is very industrial focused, and it's got a great education system as well, right? It's relatively cheap to most countries. There's a clear path sometimes to go from, you know, a certain program to getting a job in a certain company. So a lot of apprenticeship models as well. And obviously, it seems like you managed to combine both of them together. But there's a lot of other countries where either academics are too expensive, or they teach subjects which are maybe not translatable so much to the real world. So what are maybe some issues that you noticed from your experience and also from your experience teaching? What are some things that are lacking maybe in the modern education system? Or what are the things that you see that could be done better? And sorry if that's a big question, but I know last time we mentioned a lot about what young people are lacking specifically in today's world. So where do you see that as the root cause?
That's a very deep question. I think we need to distinguish between the two kind of skill sets that everyone should have to flourish in life or to be successful in a professional career. One side is the hard skills that you need related to technology to get things done. And the other side is the soft skills that you need. In most of the countries, including Pakistan and a little bit in Germany as well, what I have noticed that there is a huge focus on the hard skill. You get awesome engineers who can like write amazing code, and they can build really good products, but they don't know how to sell that. They can't stand up in front of an audience and give a pitch. They don't know how to communicate professionally. And that's the biggest thing which I am seeing that is missing. And I really emphasize our younger generation to focus on that, like building on your soft skills. Learning should never stop. You should always be positive enough to learn new things. Technology is advancing at such a fast pace that if you just stagnate yourself that now I am a graduate, I have learned everything that I needed to learn, and now it's time for application. And now you go into the industry and you are swamped with the new technology, and you're like, boom, you don't know how to handle it. So the mindset of continuous learning, that's something that we need to develop, something that we need to have in our schools to encourage this mindset. We need to have this in our schools to be just able to go ahead, present, speak, negotiate, listen, and all of these things. I think this is something which I feel is missing. And one thing which I was talking to a few friends of mine whose kids are in the US academic system. They are building entrepreneurs at school level. I still remember one of our family friends, they were telling us about a project which their daughter actually did in school on, it was a policy about, I don't even remember what it was, let me think. Okay, I don't remember the exact policy. But the project that the little girl in school had was to build a policy And she had to present that policy to the school administrator.
Wow.
And they had to make a decision to implement that policy in school or not. And she was able to get that through. So now imagine if a 10-year-old is going and showing the pros and cons of a certain policy and getting that implemented, be it a very little thing. That's how the people learn how to survive in the real world. And I believe we should have that more in our education system.
And I mean, how much autonomy does she feel? How empowering it must be, you know? Like if you grow up with that mindset since the age of 10 that, wow, like I can actually make an impact, I can make some change that's outside of my little bubble, my little reality, right? That's quite fascinating. And it sounds to me like I love what you said there, that you can have all the technical knowledge in the world, but if you don't have the soft skills, you cannot scale it, which is basically like multiplying it by a factor of 0, right? Doesn't matter what level your technical knowledge is, you can deal with people, you can talk in a normal social setting and persuade your colleagues of your point of view in case it may be better, or listen to them, as you said, when they have a certain point, maybe being unattached, being not ego-driven in that sense. I mean, it sounds kind of obvious that everybody has to have those skills, but I'm catching a trend among people in position like yourself. A lot of them, they talk about this as well, like being a good listener. And we hear this all the time, you have to listen well, but nobody really tells you how do you listen, right? So how do you listen? Maybe you don't wait for the person to finish saying what they're saying just to say your point. That could be something that was related to 10 minutes ago that the person said, but you're just waiting to get that idea out. So I like what you're doing, because I noticed it 2-3 times already throughout our conversation so far. And same last time, I would say something and you don't necessarily have an answer right away. Like you will actually stop for 3 seconds and you think about it. And then you'll think about it deeply. And then you give an answer, which is so rare, because nowadays you see people talking over each other, being loud because they think this is the way to get attention, right? So could you maybe talk us through situations in your career, in your studies, working with your teams where your soft skills turn out to be very valuable and very critical in some important decision? Or do any examples or any stories come to mind?
I need to think about that as well, because I have several stories that come to my mind about the opposite side as well.
Sure.
When people don't listen.
Would love to hear that.
Several stories about that when people don't listen. Actually, let me tell you about a real incident that happened or a scenario that happened in my team. So my previous team was a very multicultural team. So we had people from Asia, myself, Europe, 2-3 countries like German, Sweden, Spain. So we had a very multicultural team in ourselves, and we have overall multicultural environment overall at eyeo as well. And we started a book club, and one of the first books that we read together was The Cultural Map. The Cultural Map actually made us realize how different people from different cultures, they need more time to start speaking. So, for example, somebody in Europe, somebody from Germany, if you would ask them, so what do you think? They might take only 1 second or 2 seconds before they start responding. And somebody in Asia might take 5 seconds before they start responding. Now, imagine a situation where there are multiple group of people, and now the somebody from that 5-second culture, they have a point to make, but others don't give them enough time to start speaking and just continue talking because, hey, I stopped for 2 seconds and you didn't speak up. So it seems like you don't want to say anything. So I'll just continue. Mm-hmm. And when we went through this whole book reading together, we realized, are we doing the same?
Mm-hmm.
And that actually helped us become better listeners. That helped us in making sure that everyone is given the chance to speak up. And just the way of communication is only one way the different cultures differ. Right. They bring different perspectives as well. And now by letting both the parties speak, we are bringing both the perspectives. And that actually allowed us several times to really think about both sides of the story and make better decisions.
How has that changed some of the ways that you guys communicate among each other within your team? Did you put some system in place, for example, where one person speaks for a certain amount of time and then the other person listens and vice versa? Or did you see any practical ways in which the team took that in their communication?
Well, to begin with, exactly that we make sure that the silent listeners of the team are also like invited into the discussion.
No.
And the second and more important thing is we realize that there are differences and there are always going to be differences. And we need to state those differences. So whenever we would set up a new group of people, we would have that get to know each other call where we would make sure that we explicitly state, this is my way of working. I ask too many questions. It doesn't mean that I am insecure and I don't know the answers, but I tend to ask you questions because I want to hear your thoughts as well. So don't take me as, I don't know anything just because I'm asking questions kind of person. Or, whenever we are in a group, I'll always invite you first to talk. That's my way of communication with you. So if you at some point feel not like speaking, being the first one to speak, just let me know and I'll take over. I don't mind speaking. Or feedback providing and receiving. You know, in different cultures, some cultures always start with a positive, then go ahead with the criticism and then end with the positive.
The sandwich approach.
The sandwich approach. In some other cultures, they don't do the positives and they don't sandwich that negative. So imagine now one person is used to a sandwich approach and the other one is used to a direct approach. That is never going to work when they collaborate. So just stating in the beginning that, okay, this is my approach. This is how I give or how I take feedback. Just explicitly stating that helps.
That's fantastic. I feel like you could be a relationship counselor at the same time. I mean, so many of these things are valid and important across all areas of our life, right? And, maybe sometimes in a certain company or certain environment, we don't have that leadership of people who have been through that and they can set that in place from the beginning or as part of the hiring process or as a way that teams communicate among each other.
That's true. And again, since we don't listen, we don't find these things out. And I really had to practice my listening skills. And it's very interesting that you noticed this so fast in our communications that I make it a point to really listen and, as you mentioned, not to respond, but to understand. So a mistake which many people do. We just don't listen properly. And if we all just start doing that, conversations would just go so much more smoother.
I totally agree with this. And anytime you read biographies or you read about successful leaders in different fields, things like that really stand out. For example, Bill Clinton, I think he was known to, everybody said the same thing, that when they met him for the first time, the way he talked to that person, he made you feel like you're the only person in the world. Basically, he'd give you so much focus, undisturbed attention that doesn't matter if somebody's pulling him aside, he's going to keep making the eye contact and, remember people's names, people that he's met years ago, one time somewhere at a random rally or something like that. And same thing, with business leaders as well. So it's very interesting. I want to touch upon again something you mentioned and something that I believe you've been through in the past, that you said how if somebody's, let's say, inquisitive when it comes to their communication method, they may be perceived as being incompetent or being clueless or something like that, right? Whereas in their case, it could be just the way they learn is they have to bounce their ideas off of different people. Now, you mentioned to me before that you're obviously a very friendly, very warm, very nice person, but there have been situations where people would see that as a sign of weakness or lacking maybe certain assertiveness. So could you maybe share some of your experience with that and how you managed to overcome it and what made the difference in people seeing you as a nice person, but not a pushover?
I've had situations where I was passed over for promotion just because that, hey, Humera, you are too nice to maybe challenge your teammates and handle conflicts. That felt very bad, but that made me think, what is the aura that I am sending over? At one point in time, I actually tried to change my personality as well and to be less nice, less smiling, less warm. But very soon I realized that's not me. And again, what really helped was two things. One is trust. You build trust with people so that they listen to you. I'll go into more details on how you do that. But the second is accountability. They are very much related to each other. But what people want to see from us is from both sides. When I give this person a task, when there is a job description for this person that requires this person to be strict, can they uphold to this accountability? So I have had then these opportunities where I needed to show that I can be assertive. When things get done, when decisions that need to be made are made, and when everyone who is reporting to me that they know that they can trust me, I have good wishes for them all over, and it's not hidden that I am something in the front and something else at the back. When they can trust me and they know I am accountable, and that's true for both sides, then these situations started getting overcome automatically. So it's basically a matter of having that right balance. You have to be nice and you have to be kind, but that does not mean that you have to be weak. And this is something that you show through your actions. That, okay, if I have to be strict with somebody in their performance evaluation, I would do that. So being nice won't stop me from giving a critical feedback to a person. Being nice won't stop me from pointing out problems into the system and then giving solutions to the system and working towards improvement. It took me a lot of effort, and it took time for everyone to see that radical candor, but it's a matter of time.
And it could even be that you do criticize people, but you maybe criticize them in private, where your manager, your boss, the CEO, whoever, they wouldn't necessarily see it, right?
Exactly.
Like the common expression where you praise publicly, but you criticize in private, right?
Exactly.
And it almost sounds like from what you're saying so far, among your experience and your colleagues and your other team members, that whenever you, let's say, start a job, we almost need to have a resume of not what are the university programs we attended and what are the jobs we worked, but it's almost like explaining who you are as a person. Look, I may seem nice, but I'm actually very assertive when I have to be, or I don't like to give answers right away when I communicate, right? I like to sit on it. I like to absorb it, and I'm happy to give you an answer later on. Or other people, they're the kind of person that needs to have all the information ahead of time before they even start discussing the idea. And it's interesting that it takes so long in life to go through all of those different experiences and work with all of those different people before you just realize that, oh, wow, we're very different in a lot of different ways. And it takes a lot of soft skills, as you've explained a couple of times, to, first of all, not have the ego to hear what they actually have to say, and then to recognize when somebody's different and understand how they work. And it takes a lifetime of learning, right? It's like learning to be with your partner, with your husband, with your wife. You could be married for 20 years, but it takes you a long time to figure out a lot of ways in which they think and the way they are, right?
I agree. And the bottom line is we forget that everyone is a human, and the basic human needs of psychological safety, being heard, being valued, they are the same everywhere. And when you start listening to people, when you start putting yourself in their shoes, then you realize that we are all the same. We are similar.
On the same subject where, like you said, it takes a lot of humility to understand people, to really listen. Obviously, in a company, I believe you guys are 300 people at eyeo, isn't it?
Over 300, yes.
Over 300 people. So it's not a little startup with 20 or 15 people. And obviously, like the Dunbar's number, anything over, 150 people, it's like we cannot maintain relationships with all of those people. So where I'm going with this is I'm curious, what is the structure like in your teams? What is the structure in the tech team specifically? Is it broken up in tribes or squads, or what does the hierarchy look like? What does the composition look like?
We are in a matrix right now, and the org chart is fairly simple and fairly typical. I should not say it's simple, it's complicated, but it's fairly typical. So we start with the C level, and we have VPs underneath, then there are directors, and then there are teams. And the teams, eyeo is a product-led organization, and at least we are working towards that. So the different teams that we have, they are product teams working on one specific feature or one little part of the product. And in each team, we believe that the team topology should be such that it's most effective in its delivery. The communication flow is maintained. The people who need to work together, they are together. And the people who don't need to work together, they are not dragged into
unnecessary meetings and unnecessary things that don't concern them, basically.
Exactly. So that's how we build that. And the interesting thing, and I really admire this positivity at eyeo, is if something is not working, we are not afraid of changing it. So we have had some reorganizations in the previous years where something was like, initially we had totally flat hierarchy, and then we grouped everything into units, and then we realized that structure is not working. We restructured. We realized with growing business, the new structure is not working. We restructured. But in essence, it's mostly product teams, and with engineering organization, product organization, commercial organization, and we make sure that we collaborate as much as possible and as much as needed.
And how is the hiring done for, let's say, the specific product teams? Again, like there's so many different ways, but that people hire, how people organize themselves within a company. But so far, a lot of the tech leaders that I've spoken to, they seem to prefer, or they seem to have liked in the past the most when they let the tech people decide among themselves who to hire. So if it's, let's say, a squad of 6 people and they're looking to hire that 6th person, they would maybe set some time aside for the technical interview to be done by, let's say, the manager. But then whenever it's the on-site portion of the interview, they would get the whole team to talk to this person. And it's kind of like a hell yes or no approach, that either everybody's up for that person because they're the ones who are going to be dealing with them, obviously, or if anybody has a single concern, they take that very seriously and they give a lot of weight to that. So have you guys tried those kinds of tactics before, or what does that look like specifically for the technical people, for the product people?
We have tried this approach as well for certain roles. And for certain other roles, it made more sense. One thing is really important, that as many people as possible meet the new candidate, but also at the same time providing a not overwhelming experience of meetings to the candidate itself, right, or himself or herself. Because then when you put too many people in the meeting, or when you put too many meetings, then that's also not a very good experience for the candidate. So what we do is we start with some screening interviews and calls, which is done by our recruitment team. And then the hiring manager is basically the ultimate authority who picks who will interview the different people. And we, broadly speaking, go into 2 to 3 interviews. One covering the cultural aspect of of the candidate, the technical aspect of the candidate, and then the leadership interview with the overall look and feel of the candidate. So far, it was mostly a subset of people meeting, but as many as possible. But having the whole team, we are now going into that direction, and I have heard that some other parts of eyeo have done that or is doing that, but not me personally.
Okay,
but I would definitely like to try that out.
Yes, and you mentioned both technical and cultural fit. So what do you see as kind of the ideal balance between the two? Because obviously you have the smartest person in the world, but if they're antisocial, they can't get along with anybody, that's going to be a bad apple in the bucket, right? On the other hand, you can have the most likable person, but if they're not technically, able to solve the problems that you guys have. So what is the balance of the two? How much priority, how much weight within your team, within the organization, do you give to each one of those?
Alex, straightforward answer. People or culture is always more important for us than tech skills. We have had situations where we had excellent technically competent people, but they were condescending to the interviewers. You would not want to have that kind of person in your team. They have to have those basic courtesy of being a team player. I have seen not only in eyeo, but in previous companies as well, whenever you take that hard pill and say, oh no, we really need this kind of technical expertise, let's hire this person, maybe they will change, maybe we will find a good fit. That never works out.
Later.
So the team morale goes down, and that person themselves, they don't feel happy. So it's always attitude over technical skills. You can teach technical skills. You cannot change the attitude of people. We hire for attitude.
To get to obviously that position, being whatever, a senior developer or somebody who's doing machine learning, it's kind of a given that you have a certain number of years of experience. You're going to have obviously the basics done. You're going to know how to program. You might be maybe somebody a little bit more sloppy in terms of the technical depth or not, but just like we're all, some are messy, some are overly organized, so that varies. But yeah, that's very interesting that for you guys it's a culture first, which I think I totally agree with you. If you have somebody who's negative and toxic, it doesn't matter how intelligent they are. If they don't have integrity, if they're, they don't have the attitude, it's a no-go.
Exactly. And at eyeo, we give a lot of importance on people, and we really put a lot of effort in the people development. So we have some budget allocated for that, and people can really discuss with their manager, where do they feel the need to grow, where are they lacking. The manager guides them based on the business objectives, what is the best line of action that they should do, and then they can take trainings, attend conferences, attend courses. So these kind of things you can always teach. And since it's part of our culture, build our people, so all we need is the right attitude and everything else can follow.
And before we started recording, we were mentioning as well that obviously invest a lot in within the teams of growing the talent and nurturing the talent. And you mentioned you guys are doing training for the teams, you're doing training for the management as well. And I know last time you spoke as well about you're doing a lot of the meetings as well with your colleagues, because obviously you realize how important developing people are. So could you maybe walk me through what does that typical session or meeting look like, whether it's you speaking to your team or whether it's you speaking one-to-one to somebody? What is your method of kind of helping people develop within obviously the company, but also professionally?
So eyeo has a very nice, and we are building on that, but we have this very nice structure of how the overall company objectives and goals drizzle down, and they drizzle down to the level of the personal development goals and personal goals of individuals. So that's one track where we say, okay, for meeting this particular business need, you need to develop in this hard skill or this soft skill. So then the manager actually sits down together with their people, and if they are individual contributors, then their needs are, or the expectations that we have from them, They look into that and they analyze where is the need for growth and which sessions should they take, which courses should they take. I do something similar with my people as well. The people who report to me are managers. So in addition to looking at the technical skills that they should have, we look at the people skills, the people management skills, and the leadership skills that they should have as well. And it boils down to all those same things. Be good at communication, be a good listener, and how to make sure that your team is visible to the outside company and is creating an impact. So technical and then leadership skills both come into discussion. So I talk to them that, okay, this is the requirement coming from the top. We have been in discussion. This is where I see a need for improvement. What are your ambitions? Where do you, instead of me telling where you should grow, you should tell me where do you want to grow? And they come up with okay, I understand the need of the business. I understand where I stand. I understand the need of where to grow. So this is what I want to grow into. And then we find the right balance and make a plan and then follow that plan. And then we have regular sessions to follow up on how to
implement that. There's a lot of interesting things that I'd like to take apart there. The first thing that came to mind is that it sounds like you guys almost assume that everybody who's there right now is going to be with you forever. Obviously, that's impossible, right? But to function in that way, you almost have to give a lot of autonomy and a lot of trust to the person. And you look, in our company, we want to go in this direction. We have these people, and a couple of them, they may be lacking certain skills to help advance the product, to help manage a bigger team under them. So what are the things that we need to provide to our team members in order for them to achieve that for the company, which is obviously a lot of trust. And, if somebody leaves as well, it's a lot of wasted time and effort, but that's a whole nother story. But the second thing is you actually ask the person again, and that word listening again to what they want to do and who they want to be. And when you mentioned that, what came to mind is I have a very close family friend. And basically he is somebody who's very good, but he's working on the hardware side of things. And he's loved it his whole life, right? As a kid, he'd take apart the radios, then the telephones, then the TV, then whatever the next thing. And he just loves it. And over his career, he had a couple of chances to take certain tests to basically upskill and become a manager. And sometimes he failed them on purpose because the company didn't actually ask him, and it's a pretty big tech company, like anybody would recognize it. But they never actually asked him, do you want this, right? They just assume that he's been in this position for 5 years or whatever that time is. And they're like, okay, it's time to do the course. And he just kept failing it because he saw that his manager, whose job he was bound to take over, how much time he'd spend in meetings, and he wasn't doing the hands-on stuff at all. And I thought, man, that's such a waste of a talent, because this guy, you should give him a whole R&D department and let him play with these things hands-on and build a team around it, but just ask him what he wants. So it sounds like despite being such a big company of 300 people, you guys are still able to to manage that and to think small almost, but do big things. So Humera, I was going to ask, and again, apologize for jumping around. I'm just curious about a lot of different things as you mentioned them, but could we maybe backtrack a little bit? Could you tell us about eyeo right now? What is the company's product? What does it do? What does it aim to do? And it's a very interesting product that I think our audience would like to hear about. So can you just give us a bit of an insight? What is it that you do at eyeo?
Mm-hmm. eyeo is a company behind AdBlock Plus and AdBlock and Block-Through. We are the ones who intend to bring a fair internet to the world. It all started with ad blocking and the need for blocking ads, basically. You go to the internet, you want to see the content, but you are bombarded with ads. As a user, you don't want to see the ads. So it started with having an extension that could block it. But then we all understand that advertisements actually fuel the internet. The publishers, they are able to put their content online for free because there are advertisements supporting them. So it's not fair to actually just block everything off and not let the publishers make any revenue out of the content that they are putting there. And we understand this whole ecosystem, that it's important for this ecosystem to sustain. We need to have a balance between what the users want, what the publishers want, what the advertisers need. And that's why when I say we want to have an internet which is fair for everyone, so we want to make sure that the users don't have to see what they don't want to see, but the publishers still get paid for the content that they are putting out. So this concept of ad blocking evolved into ad filtering. And we did a lot of research and we found that not all ads are bad. And not all the users want to just cut off or block all the ads. There are many ads which are acceptable for the users as well.
Brilliant.
So if you have a little ad at the side of the page and it's not blocking your content,
Yes.
there is not a pop-up.
It's
or
non-intrusive that you cannot find the X and you have to wait 10 seconds for it to appear, right?
Exactly. If it's not like that, then users are fine with looking at the ads as well. And that's what eyeo does. It makes sure that this ecosystem is based on fairness and everyone is able to get their fair share out of it.
Bill.
And our biggest product is actually around the product that people know us by its name, AdBlock and AdBlock.
And I'm curious because I have to admit that I love a great ad. I mean, sometimes when it comes to the Super Bowl or the FIFA World Cup or just in general, like I have a marketing background, so I'm always curious to see when people have very clever advertisements. And sometimes it'll actually sway me over to choose one product. I could be using some kind of a SaaS software, for something like basic graphic design, whatever that is. And I've caught myself several times changing to a competitor just because I saw an amazing ad. Like one that comes to mind is Upwork. I've used Upwork a lot for certain freelancers. And I've tried Fiverr as well, but I didn't like the layout of Fiverr. And then I saw an ad, I think, from Fiverr. And it was basically this woman who's obviously one of the employees basically there, like somebody who does freelance work, right? And you can see her star review and 5-star and 98% project completion, whatever. But then there's a big red headline that says, AI took my job. And, it's like, oh, wow, like I'm curious to see what happened. And then at the bottom it says, to the next level, right? And I thought, that's amazing. And the next time I had to do a certain project, I actually switched to Fiverr to get that person for the task. So can we maybe talk about distinguishing between good ads and bad ads? Because if you're into soccer, you don't mind to see an ad with the new football, the new jersey, whatever that is. But then when you have a certain ad that's could be some embarrassing thing that's just following you all over the internet, right? Or like I think in the 70s or 80s, I think the advertisers with the mail-in ads, they basically learned certain behaviors from people. And it was very intrusive. So they saw that if you were shopping for a particular thing at our supermarket, we knew that whatever your situation is. And the story that comes to mind is that this teenage girl started receiving flyers for a discount for diapers in the mail.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then her parents freaked out. I think they may have been very religious as well. But then turns out she was pregnant and they predicted that months ago based on what she was shopping for. So that's like the worst example you can think of, very intrusive. So walk us through how you think about the strategy, filtering out between ads that people actually want to see and intrusive ads or ads that we don't want to have us follow around the internet.
Well, again, a very good question, a very deep question. So to begin with, at eyeo, we don't decide which ads to block and which not. So that is coming from an independent organization, the Acceptable Ads Committee. And also the Acceptable Ads Committee is more focusing on the layout and context of the ad and not the content. Because if you start looking at the content of the ad, then that becomes very much being gatekeepers of the internet.
Right.
That's something that we don't want to do.
That's a good
point. So
point.
for us right now, the focus is more on if it's a very flashy ad, if it's animated, then it disrupts the user's flow. If
Right,
it's
right.
a pop-up, it's blocking the content, then it disrupts the user's flow and so on and so forth. So our focus is more on that. But in addition to that, what you just mentioned, that's a lot to do with tracking the users.
Right, right.
And we are working a bit on the privacy aspect of internet as well, so that the advertisement industry doesn't become a nightmare, privacy nightmare for the users. Rather, it's a beneficial entity for everyone.
Right.
In my previous company, before I joined eyeo, I was with a company called Clicks, and we were very much privacy focused. And just like the Target example that you are telling me, we were actually able to look at the online searches of somebody
Mhm.
and go to their home to actually get in touch with them.
Right. Wow.
Exactly. We did a documentary just to
Talk about
showcase
intrusive.
how intrusive it could be. You might be thinking that, hey, I'm just searching for flights. But if that information that you booked a flight from this date to this date can tell people that you are not home during this time and your home will be empty and they can break in. And the websites that you are using can actually, the searches that you are doing can actually, if they fall into the wrong hand, and it's very easy to get hold of this data online. It's like very easily available. What we do, so coming back from Clicks to eyeo, what we do here is make sure that we personally do not collect any personal information about the users. So we are very conscious about the privacy of our users, and we make sure that that is protected whenever somebody is using the product, and when ads are shown, then how can we make sure that the trackers that are tracking the person, they are blocked so that the privacy of the person is maintained. And we have to have that balance. If we are talking about a fair internet for everyone, then without privacy, you can like really go in a wrong direction.
100%. It's a very slippery slope. And I like also the approach, because there's different approaches, and usually people that are very technical. Again, I have a lot of developer friends, and I speak to people like yourself quite often. And, they realize how much data Google is getting, how much data all of these different Facebook is getting, TikTok, like on your phone is like, if you ever read what information they collect, it's a nightmare. So a lot of people don't seem to care about privacy until it's too late. And the people who are technical, who are ahead of it, they will use Tor, they will use Signal, they will use Brave browser. The problem is with a lot of these new technologies is that, in my opinion, is that there's a lot of friction initially, and you have to be very technical to do something. Not everybody knows how to search stuff through the Tor extension or Tor router, for example. Whereas what you guys are managing to do is have almost like a Chromium-based extension that you can install pretty much anywhere, which is easy, right? Everybody knows the App Store. So how do you think in general about eliminating friction from these things to make it easy for the users to use your product? And you can take this question any way you want, whether it's some technical things that you guys do to make the UI and UX very intuitive, or maybe to make the installation of the extension very smooth. Or how do you in general think about kind of removing friction from making people choose the better privacy-focused product?
So there are two things. One is to work on the product side of things and make the process as simple as possible. So when you install AdBlock plus AdBlock, it's like really as little clicks, as little configuration as possible. So everything just comes out of the box. And if you are tech savvy, then you can add more configuration.
Advanced settings or
experience. So we make sure that the basic version is like really easy to install and easy to work. The other thing, which is a bigger problem, is the awareness problem. And we are working a lot on creating that awareness that what do you need to do in addition or in spite of installing this product to keep yourself safe onto the internet, on the internet. We have had cases where people would message us with their bank account details and ID, login password that, hey, I can't log in. It seems like your software is not letting me log into my bank and here are the details. It's not working anymore. And then you have to get back to them and say, hey, you don't share your password information with strangers. So, and this kind of awareness campaigns and letting people know what is out there, what kind of extensions and the threats that they can bring in. The awareness is also very important, and we are working a lot on that.
Did you ever, as a company at eyeo, did you ever try to productize some of those things, like whether it's creating additional extensions or additional add-ons that is basically not just an ad privacy extension, but it's something that's almost also protecting if there's any suspicious activity from the browser side, if it's HTTP, if it's missing the security protocols, or if somebody's about to enter their credit card information in some kind of a pop-up that is not recognized by your extension. So have you guys, do you do this already, or have you done this, or have you productized those other aspects in any way?
Yes and no. We have been researching and we had this department that worked a lot on privacy innovation technology. So email relays and how to make sure that they are, like, the user is protected, the emails are protected, and things are not inadvertently entered, or the user doesn't enter any information by mistake. And so we have done that, but so most of these have been in research and development phase.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time. We did some beta releases as well, but then ultimately our focus had been always returning
to the main product, the core product.
Filtering. Yeah.
Yes. And that's, I guess, a positive as well, because that just means your product is going to be that much better if the whole team is aligned just on doing one thing really well. I mean, exactly. I've certainly used your products before. I've had AdBlock on all my browsers installed forever. So it's definitely helped me a lot. And it's something that I didn't, it's like, again, a lot of technical people, they don't get praise when things are going well. And True. They seem to only be getting criticism when something breaks, right? And it's always been one of those extensions in my browser that I've never had any issues with it. Sometimes Google will say, we had to remove the certain screen recording extension because turns out it was malicious or it was recording what you're typing or whatever, right? I don't think I've ever had any issues with the AdBlock product. So that's a compliment, and I wish that more people had ways of appreciating that or making it known to you guys as well.
Awesome. I'll send this compliment to my team.
Great.
They'll be very happy to hear that. I
hope so. And I have a couple other questions. We talked last time about sustainability, about doing things in a, and this word gets thrown around a lot today, but sustainability, it sounds great. Everybody wants to do it. There's government grants, there's all that kind of stuff. And you mentioned something that there are ways in which we can be more sustainable. They are very subtle, but have a big impact. And one of those things is, for example, digitizing things, right? So the two sides are that on one side, this new technology, whether it's machine learning, whether it's AI, takes a lot of computing power, takes a lot of energy. We have to use a lot of processing power and so on. But on the other hand, using that technology, and the example you gave, just digitizing something like banking, for example, how much does that save people in gas, in commute, in operating a brick and store bank branch all over the place, right? So could you talk to us more about what are some ways that you guys, some practical things that you're doing at eyeo to become more sustainable within your company? And maybe what are some other things that you think can be done just in general nowadays?
Totally. Very good example that you just gave about the digitization process for changing the brick and mortar stores into digital aspects. And Alex, do you know that ad filtering in itself is energy saving?
Talk to me about that.
Imagine when a page loads and you need to load an ad there. Basically, there are a lot of network requests that goes to a server. It fetches the ad, the image, and it brings it back. And now each of these requests, that storage, that bringing of the ad on the page, that's all energy consuming,
Right.
which means every ad that we show, we are actually consuming extra energy, having extra emissions. And just by having a simple ad blocker installed and ad filter installed, you are blocking those requests and thus saving carbon dioxide emissions. So there are things like these which people don't realize, that just by having an ad filter installed, you are saving those emissions and contributing to a sustainable planet. Now, there are many other little things that you can do, which are simply do you have a bright screened display or a dark screen display? That makes a difference in the energy that is being consumed. We recently did a major overhaul of our whole website, and we made sure that the images that we are using, they are pixelated, because pixelated images are causing less energy. And there are these little things that actually help you in like really improving the emissions that you are generating.
And it's a very unexpected way as well, right? Because you think if one person doesn't do it, what difference does it make if a couple of my ads are pixelated? But you take that over a company of 300 plus people, that's a lot of processing power. You take that across all companies in Germany or Europe, or all the people worldwide who use the internet. I mean, that's a lot of extra energy that could be saved or used in a different way.
Exactly. And we noticed such emissions in our machine learning models when we were training them. So now with ChatGPT, large language models, internet has become, or AI has become so accessible for everyone. People are using that. And I totally agree that AI can take your job to the next level.
Yes.
But on the other side of things, if you just start mindlessly utilizing all the huge computation power that these models bring, then you are also spending a lot of energy, and that contributes to a lot of emissions as well. So what we are doing at eyeo, we are making sure that the machine learning models that we build, we do not unnecessarily make them a very heavy duty model. We keep the number of parameters that we feed to a reasonable value. We make sure that our network sizes, our model sizes, the neural network sizes, they are of the right or optimal size to have a proper. So we don't compromise on the quality, but we also don't compromise on the sustainability. And simple things like, and from a developer's point of view, if you are using 4 bytes to store something versus if you are using 2 bytes to store the same thing, maybe you are using the 100th decimal place, but by just having 2 bytes instead of 4 bytes, you are basically cutting down your storage into half. And that adds up when you keep on being mindful
when you
of
scale
what variable
higher and higher. Yes. It sounds to me like this is almost embedded in the fabric of the company, whether it's the vision, the culture, the management, the product, so wherever this comes from. But it sounds like all of these things that you're discussing, that you guys are doing at eyeo, is done thoughtfully from the beginning. It's set up as the base layer of building new products, hiring new people, the processes that you use within the team. Would that be an accurate assessment?
Yes, that is.
And does that come from the management, the founders? Is that something that you kind of get told during the hiring process? At what point is that created, or is that developed? Or do you have a big slogan somewhere in the office wall that says, "We use less energy"? Or what does that look like within eyeo?
We believe that values are there to be lived and not just posted on the wall. So I don't think you would see our values posted on the wall. But it's really embedded into the culture. It's embedded into our decision-making process. Balance is the key. Transparency, trust is our one of our core values. And we make sure that when we make certain decisions, we remind ourselves that we have to take care of these things. So we have a department actually working on the culture of the company, and we have people who really make sure that we are reminded of these values regularly, so that they start getting embedded into our systems. Our career framework that includes these values as well in implicitly. Sorry, so our career framework also has these values implicitly integrated. That okay, when you are making certain decisions, are you having the right balance between different things? So we make sure that we are living those values. And at the time of hiring, this also is embedded into the guidelines that we give to our hiring managers and interviewers, that these are the cultural things that you would like to see in the new joiners. And I remember in one of my previous companies, when we initially were not looking into the values as part of the interview process, some people actually made way into the company, culturally great, technically great, but their values didn't align with the company values. So overall, we realized that they couldn't get along with the company. And here at eyeo, we make sure that we are hiring the people that really are a good
They
fit.
know what they're getting into from the start and how you guys operate.
Yeah.
Great. I'm conscious of your time as well, so I have a couple kind of quick questions, and you can kind of pick them apart any way you want. But it's just some of the things we touched upon last time in when we spoke.
Yes, and I have a hard stop at 1.
Perfect. So we're going to wrap up before that.
Okay.
So in Pakistan, I've been to Pakistan, you're from Pakistan, and there's obviously the standard of living is much lower than in a country like Germany. In spite of that, a lot of people are happy. You know, they don't have money, they're working very hard. Maybe infrastructure is underdeveloped in some areas, different things are lacking, maybe some lack of stability, whether it's politically, economically. Yet people seem very happy, they seem very friendly. Germany, it's a lovely place. You had so many nice things to say about it last time. It's your home, it's peaceful, it's great, it's clean, it's quiet. However, we see a lot of people here in Germany who are unhappy. They have a great job, they have a great family, but they could be ill, they could be unhappy. What is your view on this? Because I know we touched on this last time a little bit, but I'm curious to see how you think about that. What is the root cause, or what can people do to get over that? Or at what point as we scale up socioeconomically, at what point do we lose that perspective of what's really important and in being happy in life? And sorry if that's a big question, but I'll let you tackle it any way you want.
Alex, I believe contentment comes from serving others. That's it. It doesn't matter if you have a lot of wealth or not. If you have a mindset of giving, then no matter how little you have, you give it to others, and that brings you contentment and fulfillment. And that's something which I have observed in the people of Pakistan, especially in the northern areas. There will be people who won't have much, and this is a true story from my husband. We went to the northern areas last year, and he wanted to get a bag for me. So he went into the store and asked for a bag, and the old lady, she was like in her 80s. She said, "Okay, son, take it." And he said,
Wow.
"Yeah, I want to get it for my wife." She said, "Take it." And he's like, "Okay, how much do I pay you for it?" She's like, No, you are here in this northern area for the first time. I'm not going to charge you anything." And he was so stunned that, "Hey, thank you, mother, thank you, aunt. But you yourself are so poor, and you are here to sell this bags to the customers, and a customer is here and you are not charging anything. What is going on in your mind?" And she's like, she was so loving. She took her hand, took his hand, kissed his hand, and say, "You are my guest. I won't charge you anything." And my husband had to force the driver who was accompanying us
give her money
to
after
give
or something.
her something.
Oh, that's very nice.
I believe this is something which, when you have that giving mindset, contentment comes, it flows itself.
That's wonderful to hear. And it's a wonderful story. Also, I think it could be that whenever we give and we help others, we oftentimes realize that a lot of people have it much worse than we did. And it's hard to be, it's like people who have family friends and family members who went through severe depression. And one of the things that's kind of common among their feedback is you are too much in your head. You're too self-centered, but not in a selfish way, egotistical way, but it's just that you are too much in your head. And when they go to a children's hospital, when they go to, like a cemetery or something like that, and you realize that there's a lot worse things that I'm going right now. And if you can give back, you get out of your head, you realize how grateful, I guess, you should be for everything you do have in life.
Exactly.
And I'd love to wrap up with just one last story from you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And it's a shame that when you told me this, I was shocked that this happened only 2 years ago or 3 years ago, because I would think that's something that happened 15 years ago. But obviously you're a woman of color. I don't know your religion, but could be different religion, could be different ancestry, different traditions. And obviously you're very experienced, very knowledgeable, very educated in your subject, in your field. And you do teaching and webinars and lectures outside of your work as well. And I know you mentioned last time you had an incident a couple of years back when it came to, I believe, a workshop. So could you share the story with our audience, if you don't mind?
Sure, I'll be happy to do that. And so as you said, I've been involved in conducting workshops, webinars, teaching outside of my work. So I often get these offers to conduct workshops. And one of the universities in Germany actually approached me. They wanted to do workshop on diversity. And that was diversity for leaders and importance of diversity in leadership. So I was approached, we had this first call, and then the person who was collecting all the information told me that they will get back to me in a couple of days. And the response that I got after a couple of days was that I was not selected as the facilitator for this meeting or as the leader for this meeting because I was a person of color and the group that was there was all white males. And they didn't want to have a brown female coming from outside and teach diversity to that group.
I mean, I would be embarrassed to just... I can imagine what you're feeling like hearing this as somebody who's considers Germany your home for the last 15 plus years. But I'd be embarrassed to even have to say those words to somebody. So, I mean, I can't even imagine what you felt in that situation, but how do you process that kind of an answer?
Honestly speaking, my first reaction was embarrassment on myself. Like, I felt ashamed of myself for not qualifying for that role.
By being born the wrong gender and the wrong color.
Kind of,
like,
yes.
It's ridiculous.
If only I would have been a white male, I would have been selected. So, but I realized after, once that shocking period was over, I realized that why we are in this situation right now. And Alex, as you just mentioned, this happened only 2 years ago,
Really?
Which means we are not talking about old ages, middle ages. We are talking about modern times. So that made me think that why this happened. And I realized that it's happening because we don't have the right awareness to this issue. People, when they talk about diversity, they really just think that it's a number that they want to fill in. But diversity is much more beyond people of color talking about themselves. It's like people like you. Thank you for raising this topic here right now. It's like we need people who can support this minority group. And we need people who let them take a seat at the table so that they can speak up for themselves.
Provide equal opportunity.
Exactly. We need
rather
people
than
who
equal outcomes necessary.
Exactly. And that's what I have started working on afterwards. So I speak a lot within my company as well. I shared this with them, and I got a lot of support from within eyeo on when this incident happened before I joined eyeo, and inclusivity was one of the core values of eyeo. So we had this discussion and how we can make sure that we don't fall into this kind of trap when we are talking to our peers. And that the cultural map book that we read, that was all part of the same process. How you realize that people are different, there are different cultures, and how together we are one community. And the beauty is in bringing all of these differences and diversity together.
I think that's a good way to end it there. And I love it that you guys are so thoughtful about a lot of these little but very important things at eyeo. So it sounds like you're at the right place at the right time. And I'd love to dig into, maybe next time we chat, into more of your past experiences and stories and your passion for learning and all of the things you had to overcome. But I want to thank you so much for this, and I look forward to have another conversation with you in the near future. So thank you so much, Humera.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise.
Unwrapped Tech Leadership Journeys, Baldur Connect podcast.